Just forgot to record. Yeah. And start the screen once again. So I was talking to you about Naaman the leper, and how leprosy itself is considered a cursed situation to anybody at that point. Can you all see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So leprosy patients felt very shameful and they were not accepted. This disease was also considered a wrongdoing, like a punishment for wrongdoing. And you will see the name of the disease also changing as we move forward in the portion. Just 1 second. Yeah. So sorry, I got interrupted because of the power. Yeah. So you can see that this is evolving as a disease as we go to different centuries. And it was at a very high point in between the 14th and the 19th century when the fear of leprosy was very high. And in fact, there was a place called the leprosarium, which was like mandatory for patients who were suspected of having the disease or having the disease itself. They were isolated. There's a lot written about this, but I'm not going to go into the details of how scary this disease is. But the worst part of this disease is that you will lose your sense of, you will not feel any pain if you get this disease as it moves forward in your nervous system. And at a point when even if an insect or an animal or any injury happens, you will lose your sense of pain. So this disease is the actual opposite of a painful time that anybody can experience. I'll ask everybody to mute. I'm getting interrupted. Yeah. So so leprosy as a problem has its own complications that you gradually stop having sensation, and then as you start losing different parts of your body, especially if you're very poor, if you don't have any protection, then you will see that there is a problem of getting into multiple complications. Can you all hear me now? Sorry, everybody's on mute, I think.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
you. Thank you so much. So before I get into this portion, there is a mention of this portion in the New Testament, which is in Matthew chapter 8, and I've just taken out that portion, wherein Jesus was approached by a leper, and he said that if you're willing, you can make me clean. And then Jesus put out his hand and touched him and said, I am willing, and he was cleansed. So, and immediately the leprosy left. So we see that this incident also happens just after the Sermon on the Mount. So interestingly, this is the first miracle that happens after the Sermon on the Mount. And leprosy, as I've shared before, it is mentioned many times in the Old Testament, about 55 times. And it's amazing that this disease has a mention all throughout the Bible. Now we move into the context that who was Naaman. He was an Aramean. I think we have already had a portion around another Aramean situation that where we had discussed in the portion of Kings only. So he also was an Aramean, and he was the commander of the King Ben-Hadad II from Aram, Damascus. And according to the Bible, he was a very mighty commander, but the only problem that he faced was leprosy. And everybody was quite in awe of him because he was the one commander who led the Syrian forces, and he had captured the Holy Land at that time. So he brought in a lot of might with him, But let's see what are the problems that he faced, and let's see if we can, pick up some thoughts around that. So I'm getting into 2 Kings 5. The first 4 verses is about the situation of the commander, that he was a mighty warrior, and the Syrians had gone out on raids and brought back a young girl from the land of Israel. She waited on Naaman's wife. Now, what does this girl do? She said to her mistress, "If only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of his leprosy." Now, the thoughts that come to my mind during this portion is that, see, the girl was a captive, but she still did not mind helping the person who held her captive. So that is something gave me a lot of inspiration. That, see, some people might have done a lot of wrong to you, but do you have the same heart like the young girl to say that I have a solution, I have a person who can help your husband, and he can help you. So the questions that I've left on the side is that, does it happen in our life that we do good for people who were unjust? Like, can we do that the same way as a girl did? And Naaman got that unexpected help or reference. And what does he do? Is that he doesn't question the credibility of the girl. So, and he takes up that suggestion and he goes further and, tries to see if there can be any cure through this prophet. So let's see what happens in the next verses. That the king of Syria sent a letter to the king of Israel. And Naaman departed with, it's said in the verses that 10 talents of silver and 6,000 shekels of gold. I just found that 1 talent of silver would be about like 50 kgs, worth the weight of one single person. So he carried like 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. And he brought a letter to the king of Israel. Now, since he was a very senior person in the Syrian army, it was maybe like he tried to, put up his might and his contact that he should go with a higher contact. He could have directly gone to the prophet, but he still went to the king. And do we do this in our own lives, is what I've mentioned in the, in the thoughts that I've mentioned. Do we do this? Do we also, take this kind of references from people when we can go directly to the godly people? Do we go via? What happens to the king of Israel when he sees? He says that, "Am I God to kill and make alive, that this man sends a man to me to heal him of his leprosy?" Now, he was thinking this as a reason for quarrel, that the Syrian people are trying to find out one or the other reason to quarrel. And now, if you see what happens here is, he got unnecessarily provoked by this letter. Another reflection that I put there is that, do we also get provoked? Do we also worry for no reason? And do we carry the burden of solving things for others? So maybe there was other way to just, talk to people around and say that what can be done. But the first impulsive emotional reaction is that he tore his clothes. And tearing your clothes is like tearing your clothes in helplessness, hopelessness, despair, that things are going wrong. And so let's move forward how it goes for him. So Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, and then he sent to the king that, "Why have you torn your clothes? And please let him come to me, that he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel." Now Naaman went with his horses and chariot and stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying that, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be cleaned." Now, the most difficult part here is that how come the prophet doesn't even come at the door, and he just sends a messenger and just gives a very simple one-line instruction that, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored." Now, this kind of, offended him, which we'll see in the later part of the verse, that how come he didn't even come to receive such a, noble commander of Syria who has come at his doorstep. And I'm sure when a commander of another country, army country comes, he has to come with a lot of people around that he has with his, chariots and soldiers. Like he won't come just one single person. So he must have come with a lot of camaraderie with him, like people following him, and kind of a huge group he must have got along. So I can visualize that must be a very, a very big gathering in front of Elisha's house. Now what happens in the next verses is that, but Naaman became furious and went away and said that, indeed I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy. Are not the Abana and the Phaphar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So, first of all, he was quite disgusted at the idea of going to Jordan. That why can't he go to the other better rivers, rivers which were much more clean? Although I didn't read much about it, but I can only get a lot of insight about this verse is that his ego was hurt. That why didn't the prophet come out himself? He was expecting a physical presence. He was also expecting some kind of a ritual that he will wave his hand and legs and heal and touch that place and heal him. But nothing of that sort happened. So another insight I'm getting right now is that we also expect the Lord to heal us in a certain way, in a certain manner. Like if it doesn't happen in that way, or if things don't happen the way we want to see, we also get disappointed. I'll move to the next verse, which is, and his servants came near and spoke to him and said that, my father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan. I'm hearing a lot of disturbance. Can somebody mute? Hi, Manjari. I'll mute you for now and then we'll reconnect. Yeah. Sorry, friends. If your call goes offline, then just reconnect on the same link. We'll connect to you, Manjari. I'll go on with the webinar and then we'll talk after that. Yeah. Warm welcome to the webinar. I'll start sharing the screen again. So we are here. We are here into verse 13 and 14. And what happens is amazing in this verse 13 is that the servants push him that if the prophet has told you to do something, would you not have done it? Like if it was something great to be done, like something big to be submitted or bought or big deal to be done, you would have done it. But how much more when he says to you, just wash and be clean? So so then he got convinced that, okay, these servants are telling me some sense. So I also reflect on it that maybe you will have people in your life who will push you to do some simple things, and they may be very close to you, and sometimes so simple suggestions, requests would be good for you. Maybe sometimes it's important to hear those and do it. So he actually went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Now see the miraculous healing that God gave him. God not only gave him complete healing, he gave him the healing of like that of a little child. You know that how children are, like so tender, so new, so fresh. The skin was restored to that level. So when our Lord restores to the level that we can't even imagine. I'm sure he did not expect that, like, okay, let me take those 7 dips and let me see what happens. But for him, it was a dip of faith, because with every dip, he still stayed on it, that yes, I will do as a man of God says. And his uh, his body became as new as that of a little child. The skin was so fresh. So when God heals anything, you can imagine the amount of healing that can happen. So when we see people around us who are suffering, and when we see restoration coming in, we see God giving back you something which he had maybe because of many reasons taken away. When he gives, he may give 20-fold, he may give 30-fold, but he will give like something that we can't even imagine. So do we have situations like these where we have to do a leap of faith, like what Naaman did, that let me just believe them and do it? So what happens after that is the elation, the state of elation that he is in. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his aides, and came and stood before him and said, indeed, now I know there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Now therefore, please take a gift from your servant. So now he was like, he was completely, spellbound with this whole thing, that what is it that is so amazing about this God, that he can heal me completely in a single moment. Like, just before some time I was so much into the disease and now I'm out of it. And he offers a gift. And then what does Elisha say? Is that as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will receive nothing. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. Now this, I love this part, is the kind of like something that we can connect to the healing ministries or the modern preachers that are there in our times. That do we connect every healing, every fellowship to a material gratification? uh, are we moving into many faiths, not only our faiths, but many faiths where it is about like, if you get something, you give something bigger? But see the kind of generosity, the kind of pure heart that Elisha had, that I want nothing that you want to give. And you remember the kind of gifts that he had got, like silver and gold and so many changes of clothing and so many things that he had carried with him. But he just simply refused, that I don't want anything from you. Here I have given you one verse from Matthew 10:8, is that what the Lord told the disciples, that heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely you give. So freely you have received, freely give. So this is something that really connected with me when I was trying to, learn this part of the Kings, 2 Kings chapter 5. Now what happens next is the path of greed. Let's see what happens here. So Naaman said, then if not, please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth, for your servant will no longer offer either burnt offerings or sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord. Now what we see in Naaman is a new believer. He's just turned into the Lord, and he's like submitted his life to the Lord. And this is a big turning point. And see, the first commitment that he says is that he will not worship any other God other than our Lord Almighty. Yet in this thing, may the Lord pardon your servant when my master goes into the temple of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow down in the temple of Rimmon. When I bow down in the temple, may the Lord please pardon your servant in this thing. So he was also conscious that as a commander of the Syrian army, he will have to be part of rituals that the king does. But he wants to clarify that it is nothing that I want to take part, and I don't want to be, seen as somebody who's worshipping idols. So he clarifies his conscience before the prophet, that I am not going to worship any other God other than you. And then what the prophet said is like very, very deep, that he says that go in peace. So like the prophet doesn't confront him, the prophet doesn't question him. He says just go in peace, because he knows that his heart is renewed. The healing has brought a change in him, and he's become a new believer in the Lord. So he departed from him a short distance. And now let's see what happens in the next part, which is, and before that, I've just put up Luke 4:27. These are the words mentioned by our Lord Jesus, that and many lepers were in Israel in the time of Elisha the prophet, and none of them was cleansed except Naaman the Syrian. So it's also an insight that why did God choose a Syrian commander to get healing and not somebody from his own land, from his own people? It's something that we need to, you need to, think about, and, maybe meditate on that. See, God works in ungodly people, ungodly faiths, places where there is no worship. We never imagined that in a country like India there will be so many believers. So God has, miraculous ways of, working on us. So what I'll do is, I'll just pause here. And we'll restart the call in less than 1 minute, and then I'll take up the rest of the portion. Yeah, because I don't want to break the, the whole rhythm that we have got. Thank you for cooperating.
Yeah, we can rejoin again. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just restart the call.
Thank you.